Hello everyone. Today's talk is titled Finding Your Presence. And what that really means is that we want to move as a human being beyond the awareness of an actor and to realize that if we could never move and if we were just present here, what would be our expression, our greatest expression? When we look at presence, it's something that is already there. It is not something you lack. It is something you're, in a sense, finding, but in a very treasure revealer kind of manner. A treasure that is for yourself, a treasure only you can understand because you only have the knowing of the imagery that is meaningful for you. You see, it is no longer a time for gurus to step out, but simply no longer gurus developing, but people communicating efficient ability and how man can become capable, both in regards to how he internally views the self and how he externally views the self. When we talk about finding your presence, before we even touch this topic, we must first see that before we have a presence, we have a personality. And so we are a person. And what does this mean? Some questions are not asked too often, and when they are, worlds move. When you begin to see that personality is simply how you as a human being have been born and exposed to your environment and interpreted, you find a very profound aspect in your moment of existence where you always have a choice to experience a new view. When you recognize this as a being, it doesn't matter how you look like, who you are, or how you think you're relevant to the story of your life. But rather, you become aware that before the technology of words came into the development of human consciousness, there was an aspect of existential experience that was untouched. It was the notion of clarity. Right now, when we talk about clarity, not a lot of people know what that means. They think what they know is simply it. To be honest, your knowing is actually the beginning of how you will move to certain profound I don't knows that bring your expansion. A lot of expansion and understanding comes from I don't know rather than I know, and so it's very crucial to become aware. You must become aware of how you feel you are something. Just as simple as that. Just be simply aware of your existence. As you become aware of your existence, you realize that you're no longer playing the game of what is true or not. You're in an instant just letting go of all the bullshit and just seeing life as it is. When that moment comes, your presence will be experienced in how you're letting go of ideology that was giving you a limited experience. And simply this happens on a seeker on the spiritual plane. Perhaps that man who left many environments to find an environment that would never change, an environment beyond space and time. There are many types of human beings, guys, and some human beings have such an excitement to go know life that even it leaves me in awe. Because this reality is more than what we think it is. It's just that we have not explored it. And so a lack of exploration should not mean that our certainty is in the right place. There are many unexplored regions in the sense that man is a beginning relationship. You don't understand how much mankind can evolve itself by the fact that its self-awareness, self-reflectively makes it a creator within its creation. So what that means is you can, mankind, the human consciousness or consciousness, is always observing the infinite ways that it is. And so when you begin seeing that your thoughts are no longer going towards doing things, but just being, so you're simply walking around, and let's say if before someone would talk to you and you would have an argument, you're not having an argument, you're just standing there present. You know, there are no words. There is a silence that is the gracious walk of eternity that you will feel. However, I want to share some things that are real for me, in the sense that when I was thinking about presence, I couldn't understand that concept. It's as if my intelligence wasn't self-aware enough to understand what presence really means, as it is, not as it considers itself to be, So, at first, in my youth, I had the arrogance of trying to be something that was able. I was trying to think about my ability, and I was trying to be able. Do you see how I'm talking about this? I was trying to be able because I didn't have ability. That's how I was thinking. Later on in life, when the settings changed and my attention simply went on away from my incapabilities to new areas of experience, in those new areas of experience, I cultivated ability, recognizing that experience is never the justifier of your essence, because there is too much change going on. And so when we have an awareness to an infinite spectrum, man's infinity is man's infinity. But at times the observer is an experience of all potentiality, where it could be as simply as the emptiness that is keeping all form, or the form that observes its empty. Consciousness is an experience of self beyond ideology. This experience of self beyond ideology is a profound existential one. It is one where you're not far from, but if you choose to think that you're not able and you don't have a chance, well, of course, you have accepted realities where your incapability is more real for you. You must realize that the biggest way, or in a sense the most efficient way to handle failure, is that the minute it happens, you're being exposed to imagery that is suggesting incapability. So you must immediately stop and observe that incapability. So after you have failed, after you have lost, do not speak back to your opponent who you challenged earlier, let's say. Just be silent and observe what you did and learn from it and see the missing link. See all blind spots, and in that way, in that sense, you would no longer need a cane, but you will be a strength in your vision. It is your vision which is opening reality. In other words, when you open your eyes in the morning, you have vision of form. Now, as you have vision of this form, you must realize you're choosing to focus on this, because we realize that different brain chemistries, as it is suggested, man has different states of awareness. In other words, he has dream states. And so meditative states are also a shift in how you are. I don't really want to linearize it too much, because it is not meant to be linear. When I say it is not meant to be linear, is that you can choose to count every grain of sand on the beach. But I hope that if you're there, you're not stuck counting and you're actually observing the beauty of the ocean. Because measurement, the problem is that it slows you down. Measurement gives us certainty, but at other times we feel so slow because our reality is kept through a very fixed individuality. And so when man recognized that he was never just his physicality, and what I mean by that is that imagine that you were not just your solid body, you were a liquid body and a gas body, similar to how water maneuvers, transforms. You must see that you have different aspects of your own experience, and the sage begins to understand by observing reality very deeply that there are certain aspects of your experience that are simultaneous, so space and time cannot apply, because it's as if your observance is aware of many simultaneous realities, and as it is, it's as if many abstract lines have just been connected to the same point. So that same point is your conscious step, and in other words, this is where vehicles become very crucial in regards to your multidimensional sense of flow. And you must realize everything that I've been saying is in the context that there are subtler realms present within your awareness. And these subtler realms are not ones that are dictated. It is not as if like it is always you are also your own unique introduction into your movement within a hierarchy and also beyond the hierarchy. So the concept of karma is very interesting because your personality has remained because there has been some things happened. You have distinguished certain imagery to have a certain value, to then have a certain form, and then for you to look at your form in new ways. And so seeing that one can play with clay, but is the efficiency of the moment being made self-aware? When you acknowledge yourself as a moment of being, that is when personality fades, because you are seeing that this whole time you thought that in every public presentation you had to have a speech prepared. Instead, if you simply allowed yourself to tune into the environment would communicate how your voice requires to be heard. Sometimes my greatest contributions to life has been me allowing my observance of a natural process to continue with a trust in life regardless of the shift. It's as if when I trusted life like an eternal being, eternity became manifest. And when I say an eternal being, this is it's an eternal being. It is unspeakable. You know, think about it. How can we give a name to existence? The bar is not set high if we're accepting certain limited imagery to only mean that, for example, you know. There are many dimensions to the human being, and so now it is time to evolve and have a new renaissance in our language where we are understanding the multidimensionality in our words. Our language will become our next teachers because we will observe how the language was creating worlds where at first we were just following the guru, and suddenly we just understood that the whole point of the guru and what the guru was trying to do was to wake you up to the guru within, to the aspect of you that is essentially knowing and can flow. What that means is, as a pilot, it is very crucial to see that you do not just are able to navigate your plane of existence innately and intuitively, but to simply see that the ability of the pilot of consciousness is to acknowledge everything within the freedom that is the emptiness of that which is perceiving itself to be conscious, but as it dissolves into its self-aware direct experience, it is not here. It is nothing. So, to kind of lead this back to how in my earlier years, I didn't know what presence meant. And so I get this job. It's a Red Cross canvassing job. And so it was one that required, you know, a communication. In other words, you going and talking to people and asking for donations. And after doing this job a while, I was a very different person than, in the sense that my focuses weren't to life. They were just to the idea of me still. So I recognized that communication is what is giving people their ranges of certainty and uncertainty in their environment. That's what I understood. But I recognize that how you communicate also has an effect, because one can act as if they are, for example, somebody else, but while acting like they're somebody else, they'll never feel like they are them. It's as if they have something to contribute which they're not sharing. That is what dishonesty does. It takes away from your own ability to allow yourself to get the totality of the experience. Guilt means, oh, I don't deserve that aspect of experience because it's justified by objectivity. You must see that guilt immediately fades when you see that there are many ways to observe how your existence is kept. The understanding of man is one where he is not, the greatest understanding of man is one where he's not standing under anything. Life eventually taught me that once I was willing to let go of the shenanigans that I thought was my certainty in this vast infinite world, I found a sincere forest where I did not know what was going on, but I had so much more clarity because I was not lost in my own creation, which I did not handle properly. You're in a reality where your mind is relating many things, and your mind is also multidimensional in the sense that your whole existence is. When we recognize this, that means mankind has abilities and certain things he can do that are beyond this plane of existence. Do you know what that means? That means on the corner of that plane of existence, that one line which was connecting the planes was, in a sense, the ability of the mystic or the yogi to, for example, be an expression of great omnipresence, for example, or gave the Siddhas back in the day their abilities. We must understand that we must have a certain range of story to very clearly understand what is happening in regards to our external change. Science is one story that will guide you in trying to have a stable story, but a story is not clarity. So regardless of how much you utilize science, you may wonder that when death comes, are you going to have your textbook there? You know, are you going to have your theories there? Or are you going to be in a moment where you have to bring all your experience there? All the experiences of living come to that moment where it's as if you're transitioning into a different plane of reality. And there's a lot to explain here, because very playfully how I want to speak about these different planes of reality and how there are transitions from what we consider to be death. Visualize a 90-degree angle, and you know how sometimes you put a square, you know, in other words, you make it look like a square where you're showing that it's a 90-degree angle. You know, it's just the way you write the angle, right? Now imagine that if that was still in, that significance is why there is a hierarchy for your movement. There's a certain significance kept within this reality that you can become aware of, that why your life is stationed in the way. So after certain times of me observing my life, just me being aware of what is happening, I recognize that the changes were patterned when there was a choice made. It's as if I can choose to get into a world where I'm many different people to many different people, and just lost in many different abstractions of how I'm just looking into the next thing based on creating an infinite spectrum. Or I can remain still and within the silence of my being observe that which needs to be present. Guys, it's very crucial, because right now mankind is not aware that he's his moment of existence, a moment of being first before he is anything else. You are an awareness to existence before you are the temporal imagery. You must recognize that there is a cyclical intelligence here, but where is all of this kept? And so your question is simply you adjusting your resonance to how you will perceive yourself within this cosmos. Every human being is given the task of trying to see what they are. It's a new task. It is not a task that the human being is doing. It is the task that an evolving human being is doing, a transcending human being doing, a human being who's immediately waking up and realizing, why have I not used the tools of my efficiency? Why have I not worked with my clarity immediately to make every act not just externally efficient, but in a sense internally presented without an intention? So sometimes providing and doing something in this plane, but as you do it, you are aware of all planes of existence. When you do this, the contribution becomes the greatest clarity. You, in a sense, become I do not want to use the word channeling, but you become an observance of the immense and enormous intelligent energy that's just flowing through you. It's as if I was standing right now, if Mr. Within was standing here, and there was just a river of just light and energy just flowing through me constantly, many rivers, I would see that if I chose to consider myself dynamic, it would be an acceleration of my story. So what that means is the ego, if you accelerate it, if you suddenly see, oh my God, what would happen right after when I die? If you suddenly take yourself to points where your story doesn't make sense, it is from there that you will get an existential awareness, because you will no longer associate with a story that doesn't make sense. So logic, it is its own loophole. You must use just a logical view towards direct experience, and you will see the logical aspect will fade because there are greater let's say, non-linear senses of flow being recognized. Logic is based on language, and language is one species' way of trying to make itself more than it is, but then realizing that sound is sound, and regardless of the form that you are, your movement is the whole cosmos. So what this means is that this morning when I walked out, outside of my building, I saw a bird just completely, how would I say it, very close by me, just fly. And I just saw it as if someone had thrown a plane. And I noticed that the intelligence of the bird is wise enough not to use, not utilize the information of its environment. So it's like a bird gets its mastery of its wings by constantly throwing itself into emptiness. So similarly, if mankind constantly throws himself into not emptiness in a way where you're just thinking as if, oh my God, is this the same emptiness as an empty cup? No, or maybe close to the Zen Master's cup, but at the same time, it is not an emptiness that is present through definition. Reality is a profound movement of how existence is communicating. And so the advanced communicator is recognizing his awareness is advanced. Your self-awareness is beyond your individual stories. It's as if you accelerate your story again, you will see it would curve into no meaning. So if we try to, in a sense, go through a lot of direct experience or seek that, in a sense, we always are having direct experience, but to consciously become aware of it, we would see it would be an empty moment. Sadhguru, a very wise man, and in my view, a being who has realized existence in profound ways, he said that in your unawareness, you are something. In your awareness, you're nothing. And in a way, this is what his quote suggested, which meant that sometimes man's clarity, the clarity that you're seeking, the meaning of all life, it will truly take you beyond ideology. So you will see that your lifestyle will no longer be the same because your experience has enhanced. David Lynch's dream of his golf ball turning into a bowling ball was very real. Consciousness is moving. You are not the same incapability that you think you were based on a certain experience. Do not always segment your sense of space and time. If you do, you are doing it perhaps for the purpose of your work. Perhaps you're trying to build something here. As an engineer, you're using just individuality or those ideas as a tool. But it's not that you're being ignorant, because we want to have like the most smoothest reflexes, the greatest ability, and the most moving natural bodies. We want to heal, not try to pick up the trash first, but try to align our bodies with an intelligence that is maintaining it. I noticed that inspiration, if it is not self-aware, if it is lacking awareness, it will try to build an image which will tire it out. So you will suddenly run after your ambition, but you'll see like, gosh, it's taken a while. Can I do this? Is this really my ambition? So you're going into a sense of doubt to see really what is real, because you, in a sense, have not confronted the actuality of your ideas. When I say the word love, you must see there's certain imagery that just poses in your mind. It just becomes present, right? And sometimes it may not be. There are many different people. I'm not speaking to one type of individuation. I'm speaking to all beings who are considering themselves within their other, regardless of the definition. Life will then lead you in providing experiences, because once you have that moment of existential understanding, once you see that it is totally okay to not also do what your ambition, you will have a greater ability in doing it. It's like that moment where you didn't really care that much. It seemed as if you were not tuning into all those things that you would have been sensitive before and just been bothered by. We need to recognize that man is not something that can be given too many laws. He's a new experience, and the cosmos is within novelty. It's as if every moment of existence is a new moment, regardless of the sense of routine we choose to dress ourselves in. But your naked self is beyond ideology. And it's very crucial that you realize it is you who can give this gift to yourself. And so finding your presence becomes the trust in life to show you what is present with you as existence. Once you become aware of this, you are a being who becomes able, because his awareness is no longer requiring terminology. You suddenly get a newfound understanding of language, and it's as if you are always comfortable with the silence. And so that is why you will be more self-aware in any sense of transition that comes your way. We need beings to immediately confront the silence and stillness. I mean, think about it. Your whole life you've been acknowledging the noise and movement. That has been what has really moved civilization in a way. But now it is a time to become aware of more than the movement of imagery. We want to go within a more significant aspect of the human experience. And so I want to call anyone as a human being who wants to contribute to humanity's multidimensional understanding of itself. We need communication. That is simply it. If Mr. Within was to say one thing, is that we need human beings to communicate new, real experiences of old ideas that don't work. We need new solutions by having the communication of the novel experience of the being who was observed. Because, guys, the externality, your external reality and your internal reality are the same, but have nothing to do with one another. It's that moment where you're in the world, but not of it, but regardless of the language you use to communicate with, you know that there are some aspects of vision that will never be communicated through language. Poetry then becomes the uncovering. Poetry was for a mind who wanted to reveal more and to see how the chaos could teach the order. Because if one thinks that he's an ordered being when aspects of your nature are chaotic, and we all trying to be good boys, we all trying to be good people, we all trying to be saints, we are forgetting that we are creating an imbalance by assuming to be an individuality. Dogma is that punch in a fight that has made you unconscious. Now you must first find your stability in your feet, become aware of your presence beyond personality, and then become aware of your personality as not to be really your personality, but just an association of how you are interpreting the person that you are in the moment. Every moment is providing a new environment, which in a sense equates to new information in regards to how your sense of self adjusts itself with the identification of its proximity. So in other words, your environment, as it changes, so does the person you are. So does your tactics. So does your methods of loving embrace, methods of compassionate allowance. These things are great tools. Man is not utilizing it because he's not allowing himself to have the sensitivity. How crazy would, I want you guys to recognize this for a second. Visualize your friend. Visualize your best friend right now. Or some friend, or some person, or some form, you know. Visualize this person as someone you've known, is someone who's alive, is someone who is life. You look at him and he's like, that's a human being, that's life. Now I want you to imagine suddenly you read this textbook and you immediately stopped acknowledging your friend as a human being. And suddenly your friend turned into just physical mass, solid mass. You would see that it's not that your friend is not communicating, your friend is not alive. It's just that you are choosing not to see the intelligence that is there, an intelligence that is directly within your observance, not in how you associate as an idea with a thinker. Enough with the thinkers, man. Gosh, how many thinkers do we need? Because I'm pretty sure if one person considers one thinker, they can immediately put that in a visualization of an infinite spectrum, so you have thousands of thinkers. We are so able in our ability to observe that our subtler dimensions are constantly creating our experience. That is how we have different intensities of emotion. So if you suddenly become more aware of your subtler planes of abstraction, you will suddenly see that your intensity of experience will shift as well. It's as if that person who is no longer watching fighting in TV series, but is that person who went to war and saw how holding a weapon at another human being was one of the most stupidest things you could do. You know? Because it would be valuing life as an object. It would be that moment where your friend has become something you can get a metal instrument and shoot metal in. War needs to instantly stop, and in my reality it has, and I hope in yours it does too, because that is how your presence will, in a sense, really communicate within the silence. It's as if that moment where you never needed to say a word, but everyone understood exactly what you meant. You must look at what is valid for you and observe that. You must give yourself a new allowance to look at your ideas in a new way. You must learn that teachings are transcendent sometimes, and they require the shift of your association with a character to more of who the experience of the storyteller, who the storyteller is. You want to see what is originating your experience, and when you begin analyzing the information as a human being, in other words, I don't know how early scientists decided in what experimentation with me, but when I began to experiment, in other words, when I went outside and began just observing that which was just flowing as life, I recognized that all of this is being made aware of in a moment. And so why is one little aspect of my moment being considered more significant than all that I'm aware of? When we become aware as consciousness, the moment becomes our clarity. Right now becomes your clarity. The fact that you exist here is your clarity. Existence could never be wrong. So what that means is your illusion is how you're interpreting something you will never be able to interpret because it is within a greater observance of intelligence. And so when you observe physicality, you're realizing there are greater platforms of understanding. It's as if science has done a great job in really detailing and solidifying a certain sense of reality and view on the cosmos. Now, as it is solid, it will see that eventually it can only get solid to a certain extent. It can only go so far until it sees that the whole thing needs to be reverse engineered. Or in a sense, the whole thing needs to come off, because those were never the foundations. It's that moment where you've been writing perhaps 10 pages on an idea and immediately you recognize that they are all wrong, and so a new notebook has suddenly been trusted with the task of your greatest work. Reality is present. You are present. Your presence is here. It is an unspeakable aspect of how you are experiencing life. You don't need any more words than that, my friends. Trust me. You don't need any more words than recognizing that you must become sincere and honest with yourself and sit down and observe this dimension and this plane of existence for yourself. You are becoming now not someone who is trying to read about Christopher Columbus or people who are known to be explorers of new worlds, but you must simply see that you are the newest person who has stepped in this kind of human experience in this generation. And as you are alive, I will clap for you, because you, my friend, are the greatest moment that this cosmos has to offer. How can you not be? How can your new moment of experience not be the greatest and most profoundest awareness to all existence? And that is when your individuality was never individual and unification was never termed, and within your knowing, you were all. All that is and all that can be. And so the geometry of language will not confuse you, because you are aware as the being first, then the human idea or the human imagery that comes to it. You are a moment of experience, and at times you will see, if you become more aware and you in a sense flow within your natural sense of existential responsibility, you will see sometimes you can allow your moment to be a platform for other points of focus. So this is a bit vague. Let me try to kind of clear it up. You are a moment of being in which you are observing and, in a sense, choosing in a certain way, experience a sense of self. You are at first not choosing this as first you had you were an idea and you have a choice. You see that where your idea is present of your identity, there is also the information of what kind of idea you're given. Similar to how we have faces, we also have our own way in which we're interpreting our world. Your own interpretation is how you must become comfortable with what you don't know, to then see that you have the infinite ability to know. Consciousness becomes an instrument that is always played well, because consciousness is right now being associated as an idea, as an individual thing, as something that it's just like our most profoundest form. But actually, it is just the tip of the iceberg. Life changed for me when I stopped trying to change life. When I sat down by a stream and simply observed that the life that I am. And as I observed this, there was no need for any other information for me to know what life is. An instant of knowing is all you need to know. Your clarity is your allowance for your greatest vision to be found within all things. And so your presence then becomes the direction of your movement. So my presence, I thought it was for my idea. No, that idea did not have a long lifespan. My senses, there have been senses of my personality which were only there to pass the torch through my observance to my next sense of being a person in a new moment of experience of space and time. It is now time for us to explore our multidimensionality, and in doing so, in becoming authentic and honest with yourself, your presence will bloom. So guys, remember this: honesty and authenticity and your natural self is where your ideology will calm down to then fade. similar to how clouds fade to show the limitless sky. Much blessings and namaste.